area which is preserved. It's a natural park where there are still wild horses and wild bulls, and one of the painters who painted this area is called Ivan Pranishnikov, and he was a Russian painter, an archaeologist, and like many others studied in Rome, and he fought beside the Italian hero Garibaldi and was a journalist during the War of Montenegro. He became the appointed painter of Alexander III in Russia and traveled a lot, including in the United States, and finished his life in Camargue in the Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer. This area is also famous for the gypsies. There are each year a very large meeting of gypsies in Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer, which are represented here by Vincent van Gogh. And here is David Girard. We already mentioned, you see here the gypsies here. It is also, unfortunately, well known for its mosquitoes, and when you travel there, especially in summer, it's a real problem is to fight against the mosquitoes. Here you have a few views of the area, and some views of bullfighting and the wild horses, and it is a beautiful part of the Rhône River. Then we reached the Étang de Berre, which this is the nice part of the Étang in the north part of the Lake Berre, and other views here of this lake. And we reach eventually the Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer, which is the very last town on the delta of the Rhône, and you see here a view of Vincent van Gogh of this area. So to close this trip along this river, we reach Marseille, and Marseille, of course, has inspired many painters, and here is a painting of Georges Braque in Marseille, and Georges Braque is certainly a painter who is interesting because he was severely injured during the First World War, and contrary to several other contemporary painters, he didn't collaborate or sympathize with Germany and the Vichy government during the Second World War. We have to say that even Gertrude Stein was more flexible with the Pétain regime during the Second World War. Braque also has refused to join the Communist Party after the Second World War, which was quite common for painters during this period, including Pablo Picasso, who joined the Communist Party. And then you have a view here, Derain. Derain is not so well known, but he's an autodidact painter, and he's one of the founding members of the Fauvism movement. Here again, his behavior during the war was not really good, and he collaborated with the Germans, which was actually highly criticized after the war. And you have a view of the Marseille harbor on the right here by an American we already mentioned, which is Frank Box here. And another view of the old harbor here by Jean-Baptiste Olive. And if you like this painter, he has wonderful paintings in the train station in Paris called Gare de Lyon. There is an old cafe called the Petit Train Bleu where these paintings are exhibited. And this is a cinema view of a very famous film in France. You probably have heard of Marcel Pagnol, who was a French writer, and he did some films on life in the south of France, and one of them is called Marius. It's a lovely film. Now, other painters here, Raoul Dufy, who is certainly one of my favorite painters, who you can see here the dissociation between colors and contours. And he was certainly one of the leader of the Cubist movement at the beginning of the 20th century. Other names here, and you recognize the name of Kokoschka we already mentioned, but even more modern painters were interested by the harbor of Marseille. And there is now a brand new museum in Marseille, which is interesting to visit, and which is called the Museum of Civilizations from Europe and the Mediterranean, which was created by several architects. You see their name on the screen. And you see some painters from Lyon also painted the sea, and you recognize Cotavos and Fusaro, we already mentioned before. And here, the Painter's Paradise with Cézanne and Marquet, who painted this part of the sea here, near Marseille. And just a quiz to finish this presentation. Who did this painting? You have a free bottle of champagne if you find the name. Any idea? Okay, you want the answer? Okay. All right, okay. Right. Winston Churchill spent quite a lot of time in the south toward the end of his life. And if you visit Chartwell, whose is a house in the south of London, you can see his workshop and some of his interesting paintings. He did something terrible. If you visit Chartwell, he has a painting of Renoir in his lounge in his house, and there is one part of the painting he didn't like, and so he painted over it. And so I think it's interesting to see that. So if you like this little trip from the north to the south, you can cycle. There is a green way now from the top to the south, which is a good way to visit this area, which is really nice. Or if you prefer, you take a boat cruising down the Rhone. And there are several books, not many books on the painter of the river, but this one is a quite recent one on Lyon and the Rhone River. And there are many museums from Geneva to Marseille, and you have a lot of possibilities to see regional painters, and some of them really are good. And I would like to say that, unlike the Seine, the Rhone hasn't actually inspired many famous painters, certainly above Avignon, but there are lovely, really fascinating masterpieces, especially during the 19th century. Now, I just want to thank you, but before closing this presentation, I would like to remind you, or not to remind you, but to tell you that one of my ancestors escaped from France in 1848 because he chose the wrong political side. He was against Bonaparte, and he was Republican, so he had to disappear and came to United States. And in the United States, he arrived in Oklahoma and opened a general store after some difficult years, and ended up his life as a senator of Oklahoma at the end of the 19th century. So there is a branch of the family now who is in the United States, and with internet, we manage actually to identify most of them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Pierre's word that there's a call for encore, but that was beautiful. The Moroccoans are all around us. We don't have any absinthe out there, but we have a few other things. So let me invite everybody to come out and maybe ask Pierre any questions out in front of a little of the beverages of your choice. Thank you. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.